Cameron, if you would.
Let's pray. Lord Father, we just thank you for this day and thank you for all you do for us. Lord, thank you for the sunshine. Thank you for the nice day. Thank you for our community, Lord. Thank you for the leadership and just everything that all of our staff have been working on, Lord. Our leaders have been working on, Lord, just to guide and direct us. I pray that you be with us tonight. Direct us in all we do. Amen.
I pledge
Pledge allegiance
to the
to the
flag
flag
of the United States of America
America.
and to the republic for which it
For
stands,
which it stands,
one
One
nation,
nation,
under
under
God,
God,
indivisible,
with liberty
liberty,
and justice
for all.
for all.
All right. All right, I'm working off of two separate devices here because I wasn't able to get the other printed off. So at this time, I'm going to open citizen participation. Anyone who would like to speak to anything not on the agenda, ask Mr. Jones to unmute the phone lines, and you'll have 5 minutes. Mr. Jones, could you do that, please? Mr. Jones, I still see one. Okay, now they're all unmuted. Anyone wishing to speak to anything not on the agenda, please state your name and address, and you'll have 5 minutes. Okay, hearing nothing. Mr. Jones, if you would mute the phone lines and leave Ms. Poole unmuted.
please.
Thank you. Okay, we will start off tonight's special meeting with a resolution. I want to let everybody know that none of us want to be in the position we're in as a council to be looking at things like this and making decisions like these. It's not easy, it's not fun, it's agonizing, and there are two sides to all of these situations. We're trying to handle this in the best way we can, but doing that with the council, not with one person doing it. So I'm going to read off the title of the resolution, turn it over to Mr. Cameron, and then open it up for the council to comment and discuss the resolution, the latest copy of this resolution. So resolution number 20-R-09, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Republic, Missouri, providing for the initial COVID-19 recovery plan for the City of Republic. I need a motion and a second.
Motion, Jim Dyckman.
Second.
I have Mr. Dyckman with the motion, Mr. Franklin with the second, Mr. Cameron.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, as we mentioned at the council meeting last Tuesday night, we would be calling a special meeting. So I appreciate everyone pulled together so quickly. Like we said, we didn't want to call it an emergency, but as we had information that was released from the governor, once we did, we began to work on what it would look like following his guidance that he released. So what we did is we worked with that, looked at it, reviewed it, and put together a resolution for reopening the community. So we took it from several different approaches, which was obviously looking at mass gatherings. We looked at restaurants, we looked at retail, and what would that look like? But also at the same time, understanding that there's still a potential threat for our community and for our region. And so we have worked very hard on this document. The mayor has been, and myself, we've been in contact with regional leaders and discussing this today. I mean, there's obviously going to be differing opinions and differing pieces to it, but we've worked very hard to bring this piece there. What I would tell you that just referencing the document, it limits all publicly accessible locations to 50% of their authorized capacity. Just kind of summarizing this, and requires they maintain social distancing, allows all businesses to use their connected and authorized outdoor space, and does not count against their maximum square feet. So what we wanted to look at was how could businesses not only utilize indoor, because we were putting some level of restrictions to social distancing that the governor provided. And we also want to get creative and say to the businesses that they could utilize outdoor space as well that would not count against their capacity. And then the last one obviously was to find a way to discourage, or at least not to encourage, groups of more than 20. It does not mandate it, but it does discourage it for non-business purposes. Again, like the mayor said, this is not anything that any of us really want to be talking about, but at the same time, the ability to reopen and have that discussion with the community, with our local leaders. And so I'll take any questions. I know the mayor will take questions. We've worked pretty tirelessly on this, and we're certainly open for their communication.
And so
Mr. Franklin?
this resolution, Mr. Mayor, this covers practically every business that we have in Republic.
Yes. Then isn't that correct, Mr. Cameron?
It is.
Thank you.
So gyms would be able to open either a partial under this program.
There really wouldn't be any business in Republic that would, I mean, that I can think of or you can think of that would not be able to open.
No, and Mr. Franklin, what the resolution allows is it allows me as the administrator to interpret kind of like what we've done up until this point when we were asked, even with the stay-at-home orders, it allows us to utilize flexibility and again, common sense with those and to apply the state order and hours with that. We went a little bit, I wouldn't say we went a little bit further because the social distancing in restaurants specifically, which you didn't ask, but I wanted to elaborate a little bit more on that, was the 6 feet of separation of tables. If you consider that takes you to the 50% capacity max as it is. So just following the governor's, but adding a little more detail to it was something that was there. But anyone that would have a question, say that they might fall, like I'm not sure where that lands, it's meant for them to contact us and we can help them navigate through what that language would look like or what that action would look like.
So then, David, our citizens, they would just call the city clerk for clarification. Who would they call?
Great question. So what we're going to do is we actually have prepared a release that will follow your consideration tonight that actually directs them to the community development department, because a lot of what's in place there requires the square footage of the usable square footage of the building. They have the plans and the drawings, so they could quickly pull that up. They
Gotcha.
could provide guidance to that business to say, hey, what does that mean for me? And so they have a lot quicker access to it. And so we've directed them to that phone number. We'll probably provide additional numbers and email. There's some email addresses as well. So most likely we'll ask people to email us as well so that we can take them on a case-by-case basis and respond. And if there's any questions to it outside of community development, I will still answer those questions for those businesses. Kind of like what the mayor and I have been doing right up until this point, other than the opening phase guidance.
And I'll add something to that real quick, Mr. Russell, just real quick. One of the things we looked at too in this was, while I wish we did have a movie theater and I wish we did have a concert venue and all of those things, we don't. So those weren't things that we needed to be concerned about because we don't have those here. We don't have a convention center or, where we draw in huge crowds of people for business purposes. We just don't have that in Republic. So that's another reason that, and we've worked with several community leaders, regional leaders today to get through this process. So Mr. Russell, I'm sorry.
Actually, you were probably about ready to talk about this because you talked about the regional and other city leaders. Who else have we talked to? Are we mirroring Nixa, Ozark? I mean, I know we're not exactly in line with Springfield, but are other similarly situated communities doing something like this, or are we out here on a ledge by ourselves?
No, I think you'll find Ozark and Nixa just released their orders prior to this meeting. And I think you'll find that they are, if not nearly identical,
Yes.
very similar. They might have used some different verbiage in some areas that their legal counsel, you know how that goes, Matt, being a lawyer.
Sorry.
but
Damn lawyers.
I think you're going to find that they're fairly identical, the orders that were just released in Nixa and Ozark.
Okay.
Mr. Brashears.
Jeff, could you, or maybe David, speak how it would involve churches, possibly barbershops for the people that are listening, maybe a little more detail on how it would affect them?
Well, as far as the churches are concerned, we don't list churches in our essential or non-essential businesses. We are discouraging the gathering of more than 20 people just because we know that in those mass gatherings, that's where you have more of a likelihood for disease to spread. But we're not going to list churches and just specifically, name a church that can't open. As far as barbershops, nail salons, hair salons, things like that. We're asking them to take proper measures with PPE. The CDC's guidance that if you're in close contact with someone, that where applicable, you wear a mask, they wear a mask. We're not mandating masks being worn. And I think you'll see when Mr. Landis puts out his message today that we're telling people that they can voluntarily do that. But I think what it boils down to is we need people to understand that they're responsible for their own health, just like we all are. And we expect them to take measures that they feel comfortable with to protect their own health. I think we make huge mistakes when government tries to identify every specific thing that someone should do, not only in a business, but in their personal lives to protect themselves. I think we're at a point in history and time where we're talking about things I never imagined we would ever discuss in a council meeting. But we're asking those people who have close physical contact in their businesses to take the precautionary measures that the governor's asked them to take. David, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I think you did a very good job of explaining how we're kind of approaching that.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Franklin?
I did have one more question for you that I could think of. And so the effective date of this resolution will be the effective date of the governor's new order. Is that correct?
Yeah, it'll
May
be,
4th?
I believe it'll be at midnight on May 4th.
Okay.
Am I?
And so
is that
up until that point, we're just under what we're currently.
Yeah,
Okay.
this resolution, I believe, Mr. Ison, are you there?
I am, Mr. Mayor.
Can you answer Mr. Franklin's question so I don't misspeak?
I can. The resolution is set to become effective on May 4th at 12:01 a.m.
Okay.
And it will remain in full force and effect until May 31st at 11:59 p.m. unless the council decides to renew or rescind it by that time. That coincides with phase 1 of the governor's plan and also with the order that was released by the Department of Health and Senior Services, which our resolution mirrors in certain aspects.
And so May 31st was the end date of the governor's phase 1 plan and
Yeah,
May 31st. Okay.
Correct.
Okay,
Yes, that was the order from the Department of Health and Senior Services when that first phase and that first order ends.
Okay.
but that doesn't mean that we don't have the ability. The council, can bring this up at any time for amendment or extension, withdrawal, whatever that might be. What we can't do is violate the state order that's in place. So for instance, we could not come back unless the governor rescinds his order or changes it. We couldn't come back and say, we're going to allow retail to open up at a different percentage than what the governor's ordered. Anyone else? Mr. Jones?
Just for clarification, maybe I heard wrong. Did I hear 50% earlier as far as occupancy limits?
Right.
Am I reading this wrong in section 4? 25%?
Well, that's on retail.
If I can step in here real quick, section 4 that you're reading dealing with a 25% and a 10%, that's specifically dealing with retail sales. The 50% is contained down and later in section 9. And basically any publicly accessible location not included in section 7, which would be the retail, section 4, which would be the retail, is limited to 50%. So retail is limited to the 25 and 10% per the governor's order. And then anything not included in that that's publicly accessible is limited to 50%.
Gotcha. Thank you.
And again, the 50% is as long as social distancing can be applied. So we know that with the governor's order of 6 feet, not everywhere is going to be able to open to 50% of their fire code capacity because they don't have enough room with social distancing.
And Mr. Mayor, so then on businesses that can't perform that 6 foot social distancing, is it just a recommendation that they and their customer wear a mask? I know that I read that some.
Yeah, that's for the close personal, like if someone who is doing haircuts or
For
nails.
personal
Or that's
services.
Yeah, that's that close personal service. It's just a recommendation that they wear a mask, their client wear a mask if applicable, and take the other precautions that are listed out there by the CDC.
Okay.
Mr. Cameron, I have one question.
Yeah.
On the orders, where our previous resolution was that we were basically going along with what the county and state recommended. And if we had somebody that had question about whether they had to close or not close, it said refer them to the county offices. And with this resolution, it'll come to either you or the Public Works phone.
That's correct.
Okay. Is that the main number for Public Works that they would call?
I believe so. Yeah. Well, I'll make sure we have multiple. I don't want to just have one number. I want to have a couple of numbers.
Well, right, but I mean that, okay.
Mr. Wilson,
How's that going to affect the community center?
The community center is going to have to be something that we can discuss a little bit further. We have been discussing it, but as for keeping groups of 20 or more below that, we still have to discuss that phase of reopening.
Very good.
Because youth baseball is another one that starts up in the last part of this month. I suspect that a lot of that consideration will be done towards the end of this order. Our aquatic center is scheduled to open third week of May, I believe it is, towards Memorial Day. So all those pieces, but a lot of those things that I believe we're allowed to through this resolution is to still make those decisions as long as we follow the order by the governor.
Okay.
Mr. Self, did you have something?
Nope, that was it.
Ms. Poole, I can't see you, so I can't see if you're waving your hand or not. Do you have anything?
Yes, I do. I have a question. Since I'm the general manager for Farmers Market here, we can't go to Orscheln's. We're going to the senior center's parking lot, but how do these rules apply to us? We've got some pretty strict rules that we're giving our vendors, but I would like to know that we're okay with what we're doing.
Mr. Cameron or Mr. Ison, can you
I
interpret?
will take that. What I would encourage is I had a phone call yesterday, I believe it was yesterday, asking about a garage sale. And so the question I would say, same as with Farmers Market. The order states, and the directive is, and we're continuing to say that as long as you can socially distance and set those boundaries and, make that known in your messaging, have signs and things, say, please encourage people to socially distance, but getting people out in the community, if they can socially distance, kind of like we're doing with restaurants, we're telling them, hey, if you can serve outside and keep social distancing, we're encouraging that. Obviously, we don't want to see crowds of 20, 25 people in one area congregated at the farmer's market, but if people can express and follow those guidelines, I think it's something we'd like to see.
Well, we decided to do the curbside thing until this slows up a little bit, so we won't have people running around and us having to watch them for them being the distance that they should be.
I think if they can drive through and still can continue to do that, I would encourage them to, if there's a way to socially distance and use the car and pick up things, that we're still encouraging a strong social distancing protocol. So if they can drive through and pick it up, that's what we'd encourage them to do. That's what we would encourage them to do.
And
You think we can get by with doing the curbside?
Yeah, because that keeps people from getting in line and standing next to one another.
Well, we've already had some people say, well, they changed that, the social distancing. And I said, no, they have not. And some of the rules that we have is that the vendor is required to practice the social distancing. They should have food grade disposable gloves, face masks, hand sanitizer, and antiseptic spray for our wipes.
Right. I think that, Ms. Poole, the biggest thing that we can stress on any of this is that no matter what the percentages are, what kind of business it is, or who's doing what, that we have to continue to stress that social distancing is the key to all of it. Right now, that's the guidelines we've been given, and that we understand is that the more we can keep our social distance from people, the less likely we are to have a resurgence or a problem with this. So sounds like you guys are doing a lot of the same things that are being suggested.
That is why we decided to do that, and instead of letting everybody just go here and there, and
Yeah.
that's why we decided to curbside.
Right. Okay.
So I just wanted to pass it by you guys so that we would not be in any trouble of any sort,
Yeah.
We're probably a little more strict than some of the other stuff, but we probably need to be.
Yeah. Okay.
Because if people just walking around, they are inclined to just go to say they're looking at tomatoes. They'll pick up a half a dozen tomatoes before they decide which ones they want to buy. So if they're in their vehicle, they can tell us what they want and we'll give it to them. And if they aren't satisfied, we'll take care of it.
Right. And I think it'd probably be good for you to get with Mr. Cameron offline from the meeting and maybe talk through some of that stuff so you'll know exactly what you all feel comfortable doing and not doing. But I do appreciate the insight and information.
All right. I appreciate you guys.
Any other questions or comments from the
That's all.
council?
Thank you.
You're welcome. My screen is giving me fits, so I'm going to go around. Mr. Dykeman, do you have anything further?
No, sir.
Mr. Bashirs, I can't see you. Do you have anything further?
I do not.
Okay. Mr. Russell,
No, sir.
Mr. Wilson,
Nope.
Mr. Jones,
No.
Mr. Self,
Nope.
Mr. Franklin,
No, sir.
and we've got Mrs. Poole in. So, Mr. Cameron, do you have anything else, or Mr. Ison, that needs to be discussed or brought up before we go to a vote?
No, I just appreciate everybody being here again tonight.
Okay. Mr. Ison, anything?
No, Mr. Mayor, I don't have anything else to add.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries 8-0 and the resolution is passed. I believe that is all we had on the docket for tonight. We weren't going to throw in an executive session or anything on you guys on an off night. So we just appreciate you all being here. And as you get questions from citizens about this, because inevitably they will be, I think Mr. Cameron's given us a good guideline that they're going to need to call the city. I'm not going to have all the answers and you're not going to have all the answers, but those folks that work so hard for us every day at City Hall, they're going to be able to find the answers. So again, to our citizens to know that we don't all hold all the answers. So if we get a phone call, a lot of times we will take that call, but then forward them on to somebody from staff. And we're doing that so we can get them the right answer rather than just us just giving them an answer off the top of our head while we're driving down the road or something. So it's important for our citizens to know we want them to get the right answer. We're not dodging them, or I wouldn't answer the 300 phone calls I've had in the past 2 weeks. But we may forward them on to a staff member to give them the exact answer. So appreciate you all showing up and being here. We'll adjourn the meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you all later.
Do I need to stay on the line to talk to David?